Princess Luna's Tantibus has evoked substantial curiosity among pony fans since its inception in the episode Do Princesses Dream of Magical Sheep? I have received a massive number of comments asking about it on a video I uploaded in 2019, in which I tried to identify the source of Nightmare Moon's dark magic. I've since discovered an encyclopedia's magnitude worth of new information about this subject, and it's far too much to condense into a single video. But certain key aspects of my findings are observable in the behaviors and characteristics of this magical smoke fog creature. So I think it's time I narrow the scope of my research to that, and begin answering the questions everyone has been asking. Luna's power observably grew when she became Nightmare Moon. It's unclear whether she became stronger than her older sister, but on account of Celestia fleeing rather than standing her ground during their battle, even that is quite a possibility. If nothing else, Luna's change in physical form is clear evidence that she gained a different type of magic that she didn't previously have, especially considering that 3 other villains later in the series took on more beastly forms after consuming magic from an enchanted artifact. But what fueled this growth in Luna's case? Magic cannot just pop into existence on its own. It has to come from an external source. When Twilight became very powerful in the Season 4 finale, it was because her additional magic was transferred out of the other 3 princesses who lost all their power in the process. Tirek grew larger and stronger when he stole magic from ponies. Likewise, something external was surely providing an augment to Luna's power as Nightmare Moon. But what? In Season 5, Episode 13's opening scene, Luna is encapsulated inside a glowing orb and then released from it in her evil form, an exact parallel to the process of her original transformation. Luna explicitly indicates that the Tantibus was responsible for transforming her here, so, naturally, this has led many people to wonder if the Tantibus was also the entity which originally transformed her. But the Tantibus cannot have originally given Luna her dark powers because, as Luna herself stated later in the episode,
I created the Tantibus.
So, case closed. Something that came from her can't have given her more power than she already had. Not to mention that she created the Tantibus after she had already returned from the moon.
For the evil I caused as Nightmare Moon.
So, the Tantibus didn't even exist at the time she was first given her dark powers. However, the Tantibus technically must have originated from the same darkness that turned Luna, because Luna never would have created it to punish herself if she hadn't become Nightmare Moon, and thereafter carried the guilt of her past into her reformed state. Thus, the Tantibus in a way represents that darkness, and unironically, provides a bit of insight into how the source of Nightmare Moon's power works. And so even though the Tantibus did not create Nightmare Moon, by studying it, we can still learn some important things about the entity which did. One detail I picked up on from the episode reveals something particularly shocking. Not even the elements of harmony are actually strong enough to overcome Nightmare Moon's dark power. Here, Nightmare Moon appears entirely insouciant about the presence of the elements, fully confident in her strength with the Tantibus at her side, and correctly placed that confidence would be. The elements' beams were simply absorbed by Nightmare Moon's shield. We see a similar effect again in Season 7, when the elements of harmony, even at double power, cannot quell the Pony of Shadows, another embodiment of dark magic. But why is this, when we can clearly see Nightmare Moon being defeated by the elements in the series premiere? What is the difference between these scenarios? And more importantly, how did Nightmare Moon know to be concerned about the elements in this case, whereas confident against them in this one? As I mentioned earlier, the Tantibus represents Nightmare Moon's power source, so when the Tantibus abandons Nightmare Moon, her dark power is lost. Without that power, she cannot stand against the elements of harmony. Curiously though, her form as Nightmare Moon remains even after losing her power, and continues to until the elements are used to attack her. So in the end, it appears as though the elements vanquished her evil magic, when in reality, that magic slithered away unharmed before the attack had even begun, and simply left the illusion of its presence by allowing its victim to retain her evil form. Assuming we can apply the logic of this process to Nightmare Moon's reformation in Season 1, I believe this means Nightmare Moon had already lost her power by the time the main 6 reformed her with the elements, which is why she appears so concerned and is so easily defeated compared to in her dream where she has full power. If she still had her power at this point, she would have used it to block the elements the same way as in her dream and the same as the Pony of Shadows did. Of course, that's not to say Nightmare Moon didn't have any dark power earlier in the episode, like the blue smoke fog which cursed anything it entered, which, incidentally, seems suspiciously similar to the Tantibus. Just as the Tantibus slithered away from Nightmare Moon in her dream, maybe the cloud swirling away from her mane in this scene is her dark magic doing the same thing. In an obvious manner or not, at some point before the main six initiated their attack, Nightmare Moon's magic escaped from her. She certainly wouldn't have wanted to disclose her vulnerability after this, especially since she still retained her villain form and had a chance at maintaining control over her subject simply by relying on intimidation, which I think is why she still appears so confident until the moment she realizes Twilight has all 6 elements. It's plausible to assume that 1,000 years earlier, the same thing happened when Celestia gathered the 6 elements. Nightmare Moon's magic fled, leaving Luna alone to face her sister, and according to Applejack, settled in the ruins of the castle of the 2 sisters, until probably reuniting with Nightmare Moon upon her return from the moon 1,000 years later. But now this raises some questions. If the dark magic in Luna is more powerful than the elements, then why does it seem to always retreat from them? The answer to this mystery lies in understanding a little better what the dark magic is, and more importantly, where it gets the source of its power. Ponies. The dark magic in Luna is no ordinary magic to be sentient enough to move freely in and out of hosts as the Tantibus does. It is what I would call an evil spirit. It has no form, but it does have consciousness. To power itself, it feeds off negativity of all types. There are far too many examples of how it does this across the 9 seasons of MLP-FIM to cover in a single video, but to provide a few basic and concrete examples, look at how the Tantibus became stronger each time Luna's grief grew. Or look at how the Pony of Shadows attempted to search for physical locations from which to draw power that just appeared to be scary, and therefore contained negativity sourced from the fear the ponies felt while traveling through them in the past, another entirely different form of negativity. Or take anger, take confusion, take cynicism. All of these negative emotions drew forth evil spirits, which consumed them to grow stronger. Then, uniting themselves with ponies, these spirits would create villains, sprouting even more negativity. Of course, I'm speaking in a very broad sense for the sake of time, and with every mythical creature in MLP-FIM, the way it preys upon ponies varies quite a bit. But what they all have in common is that their power is fueled by negative energy. What wouldn't benefit these spirits would be the ponies recognizing that they're not each other's enemies. If they would be able to see that the source of all their conflicts is supernatural interference, framing them as villains against one another, then they would simply stop fighting, and thereby deplete the source of the evil spirit's power. Worse, united together, they would create positive energy, which would cause them to die. So to prevent any of this from occurring while accumulating maximum power, an evil spirit will turn a pony into a villain, feed off his negativity as long as it can, and finally, leave just a very small amount of dark power in him to allow him to retain his evil form before retreating the moment a group of heroes united in positivity come to challenge him. This way, only the victim of the evil spirit will ever be seen as the enemy, and defeated, instead of the true source of the conflict. And while all the ponies who think they were victorious celebrate, the spirit will only have grown stronger from the conflict, and it will move into other hosts and repeat the same process again and again. Every time, the ponies will fail to recognize their true enemy and continue to contend with one another instead. Well, actually, I suppose there was one case the ponies did recognize the darkness as a separate entity from its victim. The evil spirit who took control of Stygian made the mistake of holding on to him in the presence of the elements of harmony. As we can see, this scene demonstrates my earlier claim that the elements have less power than the darkness. Even at double power, they are to no avail. Except for that, the fact that they lack the power to destroy the darkness gives the ponies the opportunity to realize they're using the wrong tool for the job. Noticing that the dark spirit is intrinsically immune to reformation, but that behind it is a pony whose heart isn't, Twilight becomes able to see Stygian and the darkness as separate beings, and as the hostile feelings between the heroes and the outcast dissipate, the evil loses its hold on both its victim and the edge of the portal, and is pushed into the void. You know, now I'm wondering if it wasn't a coincidence that so many age-old conflicts got resolved in less than a decade during the main events of MLP-FIM. When Luna returned from the moon with whatever dark magic she had left, it must have summoned the darkness that remained in the old castle, as well as across the rest of the world, reuniting the evil forces the same way the Pony of Shadows did when he returned from Limbo. Getting that sentient darkness stirred up might have been what it took to resurrect King Sombra, and then to provide Tyrek with enough power to begin stealing pony magic. Every other conflict that ensued was probably also in some way an indirect result of Luna's return from the moon, and almost certainly, in turn, a benefit to the dark spirits. Just imagine a blob of dark energy with a minimum power level equal to that of Nightmare Moon, King Sombra, Tyrek, the Wendigos, the Pony of Shadows, and the Dazzlings combined, because behind the scenes, during the 9 seasons, Twilight Sparkle thought she was building up a world safe and secured by the magic of friendship. That's the monster that was created. What would happen with it afterward is up to the individual to imagine. What do you think? Did Twilight destroy darkness for once and for all with this powerful beam of harmony at the end of Season 9? Or did it escape even this and survive long into the future, possibly even causing the events that finally broke friendship among ponies and other creatures and led to the demise of the unified Equestria, which would ultimately set the stage for the conflict of Generation 5, if we can consider Generation 5 to be canon, but I'm not necessarily on board with that. But is that the only long-term conflict this darkness could have caused? What if, in some sense, this darkness isn't even fictional? Maybe it's the thing that motivates conflicts in the modern societies of our own world. In your own life, try to consider all the potential ways others may be affected by the manner in which you decide to interact and communicate with them, even indirectly, for as long as there's negativity spreading from host to host, the Tantibus is everywhere.